just like them because they're English? Do you think? Do you think they're very English?
I think we're jolly English, actually.
What a start to the new channel. I was muted when I said hello. We've spent, 2 weeks off? I'm going to take my glasses off tonight, I think, actually. We spent 2 weeks off since we went live. But this is a strictly international football only conversation that we're going to be having tonight. I'm joined by Chaz. Chaz, you're locked in at the moment. You've been live on TikTok discussing these sorts of things. Tell me about it.
Yeah, been a busy few weeks. Figured that the off season is the best time to get myself set up for the future of my, I want to say, career, broadcasting life. So yeah, started up the TikTok, had a bit of time off the podcast, which has been nice, and then we decided to do this in typical Up the Podcast fashion. As you said, Ashley, we have literally been discussing starting this channel for like 3 months, and then this morning we're like, should we go live tonight? So yes, we are live. I'm happy to be here. It was an interesting squad, I have to say. It's probably the one in my lifetime that I've seen that's actually caused the most debate. It's been much more debated than the Euro squad that I remember, or the World Cup before that. It's been an interesting one, and I'm sure we'll get right into that this evening.
Yeah, well, we haven't really got a plan, have we? And actually, I've just realised. 1 second. Don't need that on, do I? Save that one for I've just got my mic. Maybe I'll have to order a special Jules Rimet still streaming one, so that I've got one to change around in. But I think that what we're going to go for here is, of course, we're going to run on vibes. But if you are a creator that normally talks about football but wants to come and join us to talk about England, the general idea is that we know that algorithms and all of that sort of thing work in wonderful ways. So we've made a new channel. If you want to join us and come and talk about England, drop us a DM. We've got a new Twitter page as well. I'm unsure whether we're going to set up an Instagram and a Facebook because it's a lot of admin. But let's bring in our first guest for tonight, and that's Sam. Now, I briefed Sam beforehand. We're not talking League One. We're not talking Bradford. So, Sam, are you looking forward to the summer ahead?
Yeah, well, I was really looking forward to it until I saw the squad selection today. There's certainly a lot of talking points. I don't think there's ever been a team where any England fan or every England fan has agreed with the entire squad, but I think this one certainly has caused a lot of debate. I think this is the one that's probably had the most amount of talking points. You look at the 11 of kind of the best players that have missed out, and there's a real argument that they could probably beat the second team that have been picked for the World Cup. So it's going to be interesting, but we've seen for a couple of years the couple of the last tournaments, that Southgate's route of and his way of doing things has improved England, and we've got to those major finals and to the latter stages, but never been able to get over the line. So I guess maybe this time it's Thomas Tuchel's turn to see if his selection, which has obviously caused some debate, can get us over the line.
Yeah, who are the big ones that have missed out in your view then? There's a couple that have caused a lot of online sort of anger and backlash. Who for you should be in there that's not?
I mean, there's a lot of arguments for a lot of players. Obviously, I think the starting 11 for England pretty much does pick itself. I think there's maybe one or two positions that you could argue, but on the whole, I think the starting 11, it's more the backups to them that I think there's a lot of arguments. For me, I can't really understand the logic behind not taking Harry Maguire. I spoke about this yesterday when obviously he'd done his big statement about it. You look at what he's contributed in an England shirt and the tournament experience, and that's so important. And instead of Maguire, we've got Dan Burn and Jarell Quansah. And I can't say I watch any of the Bundesliga, so I don't know how Quansah's got on, but surely Maguire is better to have around. And you look at kind of the golden generation for England and the amount of big names there that never did it in an England shirt. And Harry Maguire is one of those, along with Jordan Pickford and a couple others as well, that have really been a big stalwart at England over the last couple of tournaments. And I was surprised maybe to not see him included. You look at Adam Wharton as well. I know he's not had his best season, but he's still had a really good season. And again, he provides something different in that midfield. And then you look at Jordan Henderson's been taken, who probably wasn't good enough for England 2 or 3 tournaments ago. So how he's still getting picked in 2026, I think is crazy. I know he's got a lot of leadership qualities and all that sort of stuff, but surely we could just take him on the plane. He doesn't need to actually be a registered player. And then you look at somebody like Cole Palmer. For me, that's another standout. You look at Madueke has been taken, but Cole Palmer hasn't. And I know, again, Palmer's not had his best season, but Madueke, I think 2 goals in the Premier League this season. I just think Palmer, he's got that X factor about him, as we saw in the Euros final against Spain, that he's just got those moments of magic. And there's a fair few other players. I mean, not having Lewis Hall at left back, we're taking one natural left back in Nico O'Reilly, which I think is the right decision, but not having a Luke Shaw, in particular Lewis Hall, I just can't get behind that whatsoever when we're taking Djed, Spence. I mean, is that the standard really of the England players these days, that Djed, Spence and Jordan Henderson are getting call-ups?
Yeah, I'm with you on basically everything you said, to be honest. The Maguire one was the big shocker for me, because not only has, he just been a stalwart in the England team for so long, but actually this season, in terms of the way he's played, not the amount of minutes he's played, but the way he's played, is probably the best form he's been in 4 or 5 years for club. I mean, for Manchester United, finished the season so strong there, and actually has so much momentum, as do United, going into this transfer window, going into this World Cup and going into the summer. So I really thought that he'd be involved. And yeah, the two sort of big ones in that number 10 position are Palmer and Foden. And I definitely saw one of them missing out. I thought it was going to be maybe he'd take Palmer or he'd take Phil Foden. So the fact that neither of them are there is a bit crazy to me. I wanted to ask about some of the potentially surprise inclusions. Dan Burn at centre-back is one that has raised a few eyebrows. And then Ivan Toney up front playing in the Saudi League. 2 brave decisions from Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, I think with Toney, he did quite well actually in the last tournament. He provides a different type of profile, but with all due respect to the league, he is playing in Saudi Arabia at the moment. And you look at the other options, I think Danny Welbeck for me would have been my third choice if we needed to take a third choice. I think with Kane and Watkins, you're fine with doing that. And you've got players like Rashford and Gordon who can play through the middle if you suddenly do get a load of injuries. But to see Toney in there, I know he's useful for a penalty, and he's pretty much a guarantee to score a penalty. But I just think there's other strikers, or maybe even other positions that I could have done with that extra body. I don't really see Toney getting more than maybe like 5 minutes on off the bench, or if the game's looking like it's going to go to penalties. I don't think we're blessed with backup striker options to Harry Kane, but it's good that Watkins has hit form at the right time. But Toney is playing in Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I don't think that league is... He could have potentially dropped his own standards. I know he's done really well there and scored a load of goals, but just mentally playing in that league where the intensity is nowhere near as high, I just can't get behind that one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Sam, you mentioned there about a like-for-like replacement for Harry Kane. Do you not think that Ivan Toney is the closest to that? And I was listening to someone earlier who sort of said Harry Kane has not got 120 minutes in his legs to then go to a penalty shootout. So is it not a smart decision to take Ivan Toney, to know that you can take Kane off and the quality that Harry Kane has, that he's England's best player. I don't think that's up for discussion, is it? But in terms of what Ivan Toney can bring in those last 30 minutes of a game, do you not think like I say, do you not think that's the right decision?
I quite like Ivan Toney, and I do think he's a decent player. But I think if we're looking at trying to have the highest standards, players that are playing in the Saudi League, I just don't think that they can have that. And, when Toney's playing against... I mean, I know absolutely nothing about the Saudi League, but you look at the standard of some of those teams. I know there's the odd couple at the top that are okay, but when you're playing against what would be the equivalent to maybe like League Two players, should we start calling up some League One's best goal scorers? Does Don Ballard deserve a call up? I don't know. But yeah, Ivan Toney for me, I quite like him, but I just think when you look at some of the other positions that there's a lack of a little bit of depth in, I feel like we could have maybe done with another body in there rather than taking 3 strikers, when I doubt we're going to play a 4-4-2, to be honest.
Yeah, agreed. I think the only way we'd ever switch to a 4-4-2 is if we get stuck in a situation like Slovakia at the last Euros, when we're just throwing people forward and just trying to get a goal. I really don't see... I don't see the path to Toney being involved very much, and I think Watkins should be in Tuchel's mind quite a way ahead of him. And also, it is Ivan Toney even the best player of his profile. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's one that I thought could maybe sneak a spot. Been so good for Leeds this season. So I really thought he'd be in there. The midfield area is one I wanted to touch on because I cannot believe that Jordan Henderson has made another England squad for a major tournament. It felt like maybe 2022 could be his sort of last dance. Then he was in again, and now going to the World Cup in the Big 26. I cannot believe that Jordan Henderson's got a place. And over Adam Wharton too, who many people, a year ago were saying would be a shoe-in to start at the World Cup, let alone even be on the plane, and he's not going. That is a big call, isn't it, to take Henderson for what seems like just vibes?
Yeah, and I think it were maybe 2021 where Roy Keane was talking about, is he literally going as a cheerleader? But I completely just do not understand it. If you want to take him for this dressing room atmosphere, which I understand and the culture and all that sort of stuff is important, then I don't think there's a rule saying that you can't just take them and he can go and train and all that sort of stuff. I really don't understand it. And when you've got such a brilliant quality and unique profile in Adam Wharton, if he was Spanish or French or German or any other nation, a lot of countries would build their team around him with the profile that he's got. I don't think we've got another midfielder that's really close to him. I think Anderson could maybe do that, but I see Anderson more as that box-to-box role. And I think Anderson and Rice complement each other really well. But I think even Kobbie Mainoo, again, I really like him and I think he's certainly deserves his selection, but I would have probably taken Wharton over Mainoo, to be completely honest with you. But Henderson getting called up in 2026, yeah, he's got good experience and good leadership qualities, but as an actual player, he's way past World Cup quality for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Mainoo was one that I was really hoping to see, actually, because he's come into incredible form. And every time I watch Kobbie Mainoo, I'm really impressed by him. Like, really impressed. And I think, listen, Declan Rice is a shoo-in, isn't he? He's going to start every game at the World Cup for England because he's the best midfielder that we have and arguably the best midfielder in the world at the moment. Like, he's in incredible form. But yeah, that partner for him, Wharton is a nice fit because he does have that sort of Mediterranean class about him. And you're right, but that's the sort of, he's the player that people say, if he was Spanish, he'd be starting every week for Real Madrid and we'd all be absolutely raving about him. So yeah, it's an interesting selection in there. And Jude Bellingham is the player that I want to talk about next, Sam, because he's in the squad, obviously, but where does he play in this England team? Is he an out-and-out number 10? Is he a partner for Rice? It feels like England still have never got the best out of Jude Bellingham.
I think you see the best of Jude Bellingham personally. If we're going to play the 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, I do think his best position is a number 10. I think his ability to box crash and pop up again with those moments, he's one that, like Cole Palmer, has got that X factor. And you know that he might not necessarily play well for 85, 90 minutes, but he could still pop up with an overhead kick goal that'll send you into extra time. And I think, I don't watch, again, a lot of Spanish football, but I think when I've seen Jude Bellingham in England shirt, sometimes you can see that arrogance on the pitch, but I actually don't mind that because I think certainly with England, there's been times where you just think we're just a bit too soft, but I think Bellingham, he's got that a bit about him where he'll go and he'll leave a stud on somebody. And I think it was Rooney who said that when he played against Bellingham when he was 16, he was doing things like that. So I like Jude Bellingham. I think he's got that arrogance and that X factor about him that England really need. And when you're going to be coming up against low blocks and all that sort of stuff, I think he's intelligence to be able to just pop up in the box with a goal. I think it's going to be really important for us, but I don't think he is a partner to a Declan Rice in kind of more of a number 8 role, especially not in the latter stages of the tournaments when you're coming up against the better sides. So I think Bellingham can be a little bit selfish going defensively and maybe not wanting to put those hard yards in all the time. But I think a midfield 3 of Rice, Anderson and Jude Bellingham's got to be one of the best going into the tournament.
Yeah, I agree. And I've just pulled up some graphics that I saw on Twitter. I will not claim them as my own. I actually think that Bellingham is a partner for Kane. Having looked at this, I'm going to pull it up so that everybody can see it. So you've got, what is it? 2 strike. Well, you've got your striker in your 10, and then you've then got Declan Rice sat there as well in your 8, and then obviously you'll have Anderson in your 6. So I think that naturally means that we can press higher up the field there, and then further back when we're defending, it's then more of a triangle between the 3. And do you know what? I'm just thinking about this squad. Everybody knows who the best 11 is, don't they? There is no, should you play this person in this position? Like, you're talking about Foden not being in the squad, Palmer being in the squad. How many times has Gareth Southgate, and I'm gonna rewind even further back to the Lampard, Scholes, Gerrard debate as well. How many times did we try to shoehorn players into teams because they're the best player in their position? Well, they're not. I would say that Jude Bellingham, even if he hasn't maybe performed, Jude Bellingham is the best number 10 that England have to offer. So if you take Foden, are you shipping Bellingham out somewhere else to get Foden in the team? Similar with Palmer. I know that Palmer could, of course, play on the right, but the right's not his position. He wants to receive the ball on the half turn and drive forwards with it. That isn't what you get from a right wing position for an England team. So I think that Thomas Tuchel has made a brave decision, of course, because they are two of England's better players. Again, Phil Foden has never done it for England, really. But Sam, as you mentioned earlier on Palmer, he's got that X factor, doesn't he? He can turn it on, and if he comes on late on in the game, he's going to potentially be a game changer for you. But let's go out there and win games early. Let's not worry about having to come back into a game after 70 minutes or needing a game changer. Let's just go and win the games early with the tactics that we've got. And I just think that it's a smart play, but it's also a brave play. What are your thoughts, Sam?
I think with trying to kill teams off early, it's obviously we need to see that high intensity from the off. And I feel like we never really saw that under Southgate. It was more kind of defend first, make sure we don't concede early, and then try and grow into the game. But I just feel like with the quality that we've got, and especially in some of the earlier group stage games, maybe even the earlier knockout games, when we're playing against these on paper lower quality sides, we should just be going at them from the off. And I think the heat and the conditions that we're going to be playing in are going to be incredibly tough. And that's why getting the squad selection right, I do think is very important, because pretty much everybody knows what the starting 11 is going to be. But then the subs out of that, how many game changes you're really looking at, because you might get to an hour and a couple of midfielders or your wingers might need a change. And I just think Phil Foden's one for me that I've never really rated England shirt. I just think he's very anonymous. He doesn't really do it. But when I look at even someone like Eze, I think Eze has got ability and I think he's a good player. But if I was to back somebody to pop up with a moment, I feel like Cole Palmer would just have that on Eze. And I think actually Morgan Rogers is going to play quite a big part for England. I think he's done quite well since Tuchel's come in a lot of the friendlies and the qualifiers and all that sort. So I think Rogers certainly suits what Tuchel likes. But I don't know. I feel like not having Cole Palmer in there, I really feel like it's going to come back and cost us, because Madueke, I think he'll be useful playing against the low blocks when we're playing against. I mean, honestly, I've got no idea who've been playing in the groups, but I think he's going to be useful when we are playing against those low blocks, and he's got that ability to go 1v1. But then when you need genuine quality in the latter stages, say if Saka picks up an injury or he's just not quite performing or he's tired, for example, then you're relying on Madueke potentially in a World Cup final. I really don't see it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, do you know what? One player, and Zach has just said it in the comments, Gibbs White has been robbed, thought he would have a special tournament. He's had a good season. There is no arguing that. However, we talk about players in positions. I think that Gibbs White would be our third best central attacking midfielder. He's behind Bellingham. He's behind Morgan Rogers for me. That's maybe worth an argument and a discussion. Is there any point taking a third best in their position? What do they offer if they're third best? Like you're going for the experience. Like it's a 3-week holiday in America, isn't it?
I think it's good to have different profiles and different types of players. But yeah, I agree. I do think Gibbs White is a little bit unlucky to not be in there. And I think, say, if Gibbs White was playing for Arsenal and Eze was playing for Nottingham Forest, it comes back to it again. There's clearly a big six bias in there, because Gibbs White, I think he's England's highest goal scoring midfielder this season. I know Tuchel said that he was unlucky to miss out and he nearly got in off the left. But I even look at somebody like an Anthony Gordon, and I mean, I watched him personally this season when Newcastle played against Bradford, and I thought he was pretty poor in that game. But you look at his Premier League season, 6 goals, and I think a fair few of them were from penalties. And even his Newcastle teammate in Harvey Barnes, I think he's had a much better season than Anthony Gordon, and he obviously committed to England rather than Scotland. And I think that's one that's kind of been glossed over a little bit. Anthony Gordon, it just seems to be well accepted that he's in there, but I think he's actually had a really, really poor season. And towards the back end of the campaign, he's obviously been benched by Eddie Howe. And I'm really surprised by kind of the general reaction to seeing Gordon just so accepted in there, as if like, yeah, he absolutely deserves it. But I think he's had a really poor season.
Yeah, no, I agree on Gordon. I mean, to be fair, Newcastle have had a poor season just in general, haven't they? But he's certainly not hit the heights. What I would say is Gordon does have quite a lot of credit in the bank when it comes to England. He's actually been pretty excellent for England every time he's played for the last sort of 2 years. So I did think Gordon would probably be a shoe-in. And I also think Rashford at the moment, in sort of, he goes through these phases, doesn't he, Rashford, of being terrible. And then he gets a bit of confidence and he looks like one of the best players in the world, and then he's terrible again. Luckily, we're finally going into a major tournament with Marcus Rashford in that sort of rich vein, that purple vein of form. So I don't think anyone's going to displace him. I honestly think Rashford will start pretty much every game for England at the World Cup unless he picks up any injuries. The Morgan Gibbs-White one's an interesting one. You mentioned sort of a top six bias, Sam. While I don't agree, the one thing I would sort of push back on is, does having experience playing for a top six side who have got to a Champions League final, who have won the league, not better equip you to play in a high pressure environment like for England at a World Cup than playing for Nottingham Forest? I know that sometimes playing for a top six side can naturally push you higher up in the ranking, and some people think that's just pure bias. But is there something to be said for, well, I'd rather have a player who's going to play next week in a Champions League final, who's played in title deciders, who's played in cup finals at Wembley this season, rather than someone who's maybe not as used to those high pressure games?
I understand your point, but I would also then argue, you look at, say, for example, Eze and Madueke at Arsenal, and then you look at Morgan Gibbs-White and Jarrod Bowen. I think Gibbs-White and Jarrod Bowen being the two star players for their sides who have, for the large part, been in relegation battles for this season. I'd argue there's more pressure on those type of players because they aren't relying on all the other quality around them. It's basically on them. And I know there's the odd one or two players in both of those squads. And I know Forest have kind of come away from relegation over the last couple of weeks, but I think there's equally just as much pressure on the shoulders of a Gibbs-White at Forest or a Bowen at West Ham than there is on a kind of rotation option of a Madueke or an Eze at Arsenal. I know that they're obviously playing for a club who are challenging for much better things, but I would say there's equally as much pressure on Gibbs-White and Bowen, for example, than those two.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there is pressure. I do I would back a player that's played. And I think that's why Jordan Henderson is in there over an Adam Wharton, is potentially Tuchel thinks, we want to win this World Cup. Let's get proven winners, players that have won stuff at a high level in. But yeah, I don't know. I just think, and to be fair, Eze has also had a very good season at Arsenal. The fact that he's managed to keep Martin Odegaard, who a year ago people were saying is like the best attacking midfielder in the league and the next Kevin De Bruyne, the fact that he's managed to keep him at bay and actually out of the Arsenal team on quite a few occasions this season demonstrates that he's had a good year. But I did think Morgan Gibbs-White might be in there, and maybe taking an extra number 10 sort of is the solution to what you said, Sam, is do we need three strikers? Do we need that extra player in Ivan Toney? Or would we be better off taking another number 10 because we've just got such a wealth of them? And, if you're trying to get in, break down a low block, having a number 10 to bring on rather than a big striker is maybe just as effective. I don't know. It's an interesting debate.
Yeah, I think even when you look at like the strikers, for example, I don't think there's ever going to be a situation where England at any point are going to start pumping the ball into the box. And that's why I don't think somebody like a Calvert-Lewin or a Danny Welbeck's may be included. And I know Tony's got that physicality about him, but I also think he's a really good finisher, is Ivan Toney. I know I've kind of said he shouldn't really be included earlier, but I'd still much rather have him in there than a Calvert-Lewin or a Welbeck, because I think out of Toney and those other two, I think if there was a chance to fall in the box, I think Ivan Toney is the man that you do want it to fall to. But that maybe says more about Welbeck and Calvert-Lewin and their maybe unique skill set, where maybe across the full season they're more ideal. But I think in these one-off sort of knockout games, I think Toney would certainly contribute more than those two. But even then, I don't see Toney getting that many minutes, like I previously said.
No, I think you're right. I don't think he's there for the minutes. I think he's there for if we get to a quarter-final or a semi-final and we need somebody to get on and take a penalty. Sam, I've got one last question to ask you. After seeing the squad today, can England win the World Cup?
I mean, yes is the short answer. We can do that. I think there's arguably we've got one of the best starting 11s, but I think there's certainly other countries that have got more squad depth or certainly picked more squad depth. But again, you look at the teams that Gareth Southgate has picked, and there's maybe been a much wider consensus that the majority of his picks are much more favoured, and that hasn't worked for England. We haven't got over the line doing that. I think Tuchel is a much better tactician than Gareth Southgate, but I think him being German for some reason still has the debates around that, because some people would argue that, well, if the players have to be English, then all the staff should be English. But I think Tuchel is more likely to get it over the line than Southgate, but I still think there's probably other countries that are better equipped overall. I would like to say that it's possible for England to do it, but I wouldn't say I'm confident going into it. I would say I've been a bit more confident over the last two tournaments than I am coming into this one.
Wicked. Well, thank you, Sam. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure that we'll have you on closer to tournament time if you want to talk about England at all. Do you want to give a shout out to your channel as well? Obviously, I assume your last video was probably not a happy one, but
yeah, it's just SHD, plenty of Bradford City or League One, general EFL football content over there. I'm not sure I'm planning on doing too much stuff for the World Cup, but yeah, for next season, for any League One fans, there'll be plenty of content over there. So just SHD, or I think it's at SHD07 is the username.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam, and we will see you next season for hopefully 2 preview shows when Posh come up against Bradford.
Lovely stuff. Cheers.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.
Right, I'm going to do a quick swap. Let's get Harry Anders straight in. There he is. Harry, how are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me on this debut episode of Jules Rimet still streaming. How are you guys doing?
Well, I only got you in because you need to be here when we sign off, because I'm not signing off how you suggested. Harry, I've got a question for you. Is Ezri Konsa England's second best centre-back?
No.
Who is England's second best centre-back? No, don't do this.
Konsa is England's best centre-back.
Do not do this, Harry. Not now. Not now.
Seriously, you've asked me a question.
Go for it.
I watch plenty of the Premier League. Konsa is phenomenal. He has, if I'm going to talk about deficiencies, very occasionally on the ball, gets the ball trapped underneath his feet, which puts unnecessary pressure on himself. But he is phenomenal. Very rarely gets dribbled past. Excellent aerially. Extremely savvy at positioning. Him and Gahey are a perfect pairing, in my opinion. And Gahey with his left foot means you've got that natural balance that I know Mings has never been a consistent England player, but Mings actually did start against Croatia in Euro 21. And I bring that game up because I want to talk about Phil Foden in a second. And having a natural left-footed player on the left of the England centre-back pairing does really help us. And I think that Gahey and Konsa are a perfect duo to start this tournament with.
Yeah, that's why I was a bit surprised that he's not taken Colwill as well, because Colwill is also that natural left-footed balance. I thought Konsa and Gahey are probably a shoe-in to start. That said, if he'd taken Maguire, I think Maguire could have stirred them some things up, because he's very rarely anything other than excellent in an England shirt. But Konsa and Gahey is the very obvious starting partnership. And I did think Colwill might be taken as a backup option to Mark Gahey. Harry, moving up through the squad, already we've had Sam very annoyed that we're taking now I think he's like 56-year-old Jordan Henderson. What are your views on that?
Very limited in progression, very limited defensively, just intense effort ball, which got us to a semi-final in 2018 to a certain extent, and then he was absolutely crap in the semi-final. I think this is as ridiculous as a decision as Theo Walcott to 2006 was. And we are just absolutely stealing an England career away from Wharton at this point. It's just, there's a certain extent we've got to think about the framework for players developing in the national team. Unless they think Wharton will never be good enough for England, which would be an insane view in my opinion, he absolutely should have gone to this tournament. I agreed with what, I forget his name already, but the last guest said about just having Sam, just have Jordan on the plane. I'm sure he'd be happy to be there, knowing full well, look, if any midfielder gets injured and you've got your next man up before whatever the deadline is for any injury replacements, maybe you put Henderson in at that point. But in the current circumstance of Wharton being there available, it is baffling.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I think it's just a ridiculous. Take him as a coach if you really want his presence in the changing room. Like, I genuinely, I mean, maybe we're discrediting. He's actually probably had an understatedly good season at Brentford. He's been playing for them quite consistently, and they've had a very good season. And so, in footballing terms, he's probably not as much of a dinosaur as some people are suggesting, but he's definitely nowhere near the sort of cultured, classy midfielder that Adam Wharton is. Absolutely nowhere near. I was shocked when he was taken to even the last tournament. So for him to have made it again,
I don't think Jordan Henderson was at the last tournament. No, I think he was dropped.
That makes it even more baffling that after being dropped, he's then come straight back in and is now back. That if he actually was dropped, which I probably should know, that's poor research on my part. But if he was dropped for the last tournament, then bringing him back into the fold is an even more ludicrous decision. I mean, it's not as if I just don't see when he's going to get on the pitch. Like, it's not as if unless we have literally the craziest midfield injury crisis that's ever happened at a tournament, there's no way that he's going to touch the grass. Adam Wharton actually could have been a very good option when we need to control games, his passing range. Very, very strange decision. And Sam said it was baffling, and I'm completely with him. It is just ludicrous. You said you wanted to talk about Cole Palmer, Harry. And Phil Foden, sorry. The debate about Phil Foden, Cole Palmer. I thought one of that pair would at least go. Turns out neither of them are going. Interesting.
Very interesting. I brought up that Croatia game in particular, which was something like 10,000 fans in Wembley. That's the beginning of the summer. COVID was still going on, 2021. And we play Croatia in the first game of what is essentially a home tournament because so many of the games were played in England. And we'd obviously lost to them only 3 years earlier in the semi-final. And we beat them. I know it was only 1-0, but we beat them fairly comprehensively. What is often forgotten about that game is that Phil Foden hit the post in the first, I forget the exact minute, but it was in the first 10 minutes or so. Just a beautiful bit of play, curling it onto the post. It's just not quite coming off for him. And I look back now and think at that moment, if he had scored that goal, the opening goal for England at essentially a home tournament in the Euros, I think it could have set him on a completely different path with the national team. He's consistently good in a very specific system under Guardiola that has insanely wide wingers at all times that are essentially an outlet for you whenever anything is a challenge in the middle of the field. He is not that great at through balls. Really nice technical dribbler, but I can understand it. I can understand why he's not on the plane, given his form. Palmer, you've got to think about that roof, that ceiling of his ability is just unbelievable. And the fact that he put in the level of performances he did at the last tournament, obviously setting up Ollie Watkins for a goal in the semi-final against the Netherlands, it's a lot to leave at home. It is a lot to leave a player who's got that level of ability. There's a whole generation that sorry, Charlie, you probably don't remember, of England fans who from 96, 98, all the way through to 2018, never saw a semi-final. And now we're talking about players who are getting left at home who performed in a semi-final of the last tournament. And we're just in a new era. I think it's very risky leaving him at home in that context that he's already done it at a tournament for England.
Yeah, and not forgetting as well the goal he scored in the final to save us and, was an equaliser.
I actually did forget. So there you go, in the final as well.
Yeah, literally came on off the bench and, well, for many people, thought he'd rescued England's hope before we went and conceded again. And you mentioned Phil Foden as well in that semi-final, was probably his best game for England, I'd say, or one of his better games. He smashed the post as well in that one from range, nearly scored an absolutely insane dribbling goal. I thought that, I think that not taking either of them, and it comes back to, listen, if they were taken over, let's say, a Morgan Rogers, it would be the most outcry of Big Six bias you've ever seen, because neither of them have had, by their own standards, exceptional seasons. But I'm surprised with Tuchel's mentality of, being a winner, being a manager who's won the Champions League, who's competed right at the top, being potentially more ruthless and less sort of culture building than Gareth Southgate. For him not to take those players that, as you mentioned, have such a high ceiling, is interesting. And I think, when you mentioned Jordan Henderson, you said obviously Adam Wharton could have come in, but I honestly would have even taken maybe one of those two out of Foden or Palmer over Jordan Henderson and just taken a smaller number of defensive midfielders, because the risk of that would be negligible, I think. And having that box of tricks there, he's still scored 13 goals and assisted 5, so still got nearly 20 goal contributions for Palmer, and people are talking about him like he's playing absolutely horrifically. It is a very brave shout.
And just one more thing on that, Charlie. So you talk about the production there. Noni Madueke has, if I'm not mistaken, 2 Premier League goals this season. And he's a direct competitor for that right wing position. And he's on the plane. I mean, the Big Six bias. Look, Saka's understudy going with him. I don't know. I do not know.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
Well, Charlie, I've just looked back at your notable absentees. You've not included Trent Alexander-Arnold in your list as well. Like, is that big? Like, obviously, Trent Alexander hasn't featured for Tuchel. What has he got into any 2026 squad? I don't think he has. Did I suggest this in our group, or did I say it when I was at work? If I was going to take Trent Alexander-Arnold, I think I would have taken him as a right winger, and I would have replaced Noni Madueke in the squad and put him there. Realistically, the guy's got the best delivery into the box of anyone in an England squad, I would say, and that passing range that he's got. But I don't think he's a right back.
Except for James Ward-Prowse, of course, Ashley.
Yeah, well, when was the last time he played football for England? Crikey. When Tuchel likes his defenders to defend, doesn't he? We're not going to see this marauding right back and left back like we've seen from Luke Shaw and Kyle Walker and all of those sorts. And Trent Alexander-Arnold is not a very good defender. I don't think anybody can argue that. He is a attacking right back at best, if not a more progressive footballer than that.
He's unique. He is genuinely unique. There's no one else who does what he does from the right back position in world football.
And do you not just think that makes it impossible to put him into a setup where you have 8 games, 9 games, is it? How do you fit in somebody that has one talent's harsh, but has one talent? How do you fit that into 9 games of football when you don't know what the playbook is over those 9 games?
Yeah, I get it. I think he is probably, if there's a list all time of best players for England to ever not go to a tournament, obviously injury being ignored, he's got to be up there. He's got to be up there as one of the best ever left at home, not on an injury list. he's also got versatility because he can play defensive midfield and has done so for England and has done so well at least a couple of occasions. Reece James has also gone into midfield for England before, albeit, if I'm not mistaken, it was against Andorra, so hardly any decent opposition there. But yeah, when you want versatile players, I think there's an element of that which would have lent to the idea that you should take Trent anyway, because if you're not playing him as first choice right back, if you're playing Reece James at right back, which I think is perfectly fine to do, you've also got depth, even more depth in a embarrassment of riches at the holding midfield position. So it's strange. I agree with what you said, by the way, a moment ago, Ashley, about the culture, more ruthless, less about the culture building, because hey, look, Djed Spence is on the plane. And are we really putting Djed Spence and Trent Alexander-Arnold in the same conversation for ability from the right back position? Do me a favour.
Yeah, the weirdest thing for me is that Djed Spence has been taken as a left back. He has to have been, because we've taken, well, if he has been taken as a right back, then we've taken one left back and three right backs, which wouldn't make sense. And he's played all of his minutes for England at left back. It's a very strange one, isn't it? Djed Spence became a left back for Spurs out of absolute necessity because they had nobody there. He's a right-footed player, so he's going to be playing inverted fullback, basically, if he gets on. It's a very weird selection. When you've got Lewis Hall, who is, in my view, the future of English left backs. I really rate Lewis Hall quite highly. I think he's got a very big ceiling. When you've got him,
Now, listen, there was a little bit of bait in my Konza comment, but I sincerely mean this when I say that Lewis Hall is crap. In any other era of England left backs, he would be nowhere near the conversation. It was only 4 years ago that you had a player like Matty Cash having to declare for Poland because he was the sixth choice right back on the other side. Like the crazy depth that we've had on the right-hand side at the fullback position has just been like generational. We're having the exact opposite experience on the left-hand side right now, having come out of the Ashley Cole era, somewhat Luke Shaw, if you want to call it that as well. We've obviously had Trippier start there. It's our weakest point by a mile. And Lewis Hall being left at home in that context, it doesn't surprise me because he is pants.
Yeah, you know what? No, Chaz, let me in here. I wholeheartedly agree that at left back we are just truly mudded at the moment, and we discussed it, didn't we, Harry? Don't want to talk too much posh, but Harrison Burrows at the moment is a top 10 English left back. That's the level and that's the quality that is coming through.
Yeah. If anyone in the comments wants to try and name 10 English left backs better than Harrison Burrows, good luck. He is right now struggling to get in Sheffield United's team in the Championship in the top 10 left backs for England right now.
Come on, Chaz, off you go. I'm
not going to take you off on that challenge right now, but I will do it after this episode because I think that's a bit of a crazy claim.
Harley Mills in the top 15.
The good thing about, first of all, I actually massively disagree about Lewis Hall. I think he's a really good player, And when you're talking, the Villa bias of talking about Matty Cash and then try and talk about how good our right back options are, he is actually terrible, Matty Cash. Lewis Hall, I think, is a very good player and still very young. The good thing for England is that we have an actually exceptional left back coming through in Nico O'Reilly, who I think is a very, very good player. And you look at the way he's played for City this season, he's been probably the breakthrough star of the Premier League. And he can do that sort of culture thing of inverting. Pep's even used him in midfield at times, but we know that Pep often uses players in midfield just because he thinks they're so good on the ball that he wants them on the ball more often.
I would hope as well, just given his stature, that we've just got someone that's a bit more effective for corners, for balls coming in from crosses. You're hoping we're not conceding any goals at the back left post when he's defending it, given that he's probably taller than most of the strikers at the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And tall left backs is definitely a thing at the minute, isn't it? Like you look at Arsenal, they have Hincapié and Calafiori, and throughout the sort of them big physical left backs are making a resurgence through world football. But yeah, I really like Nico O'Reilly. I'm surprised. I genuinely had the interesting thing is that we're taking Dan Burn, who could be either a centre back or a left back. I don't know what position we're taking him for because he doesn't play centre back for Newcastle. He plays left back. He plays left back a lot more than he plays centre back for Newcastle.
Would you? So you'd have taken Maguire on the plane, presumably, Charlie. Is it Dan Burn that you'd have hooked?
Yeah, Dan Burn's the one for me that makes absolutely no sense.
Oh, actually saying no. So if Harry Maguire was in,
Quansah could go.
Quansah.
Yeah, Quansah can go. Look, it's a naive comment. I don't watch enough. I don't watch it. Sam said it as well. Have I watched any Bundesliga games this season? No, I have not. But this is a lad that I'm pretty sure was on loan at Bristol Rovers 2 seasons ago. So has he had a meteoric rise in his footballing ability? Well, clearly if he's playing in the Bundesliga, he's got something about him. But yeah, it's a risk, isn't it? When you don't, obviously Tuchel's watched him, but I like Dan Burn, and I'm sure that I watched Tuchel say today that the aim of this tournament is going to be to not concede from set pieces and to score lots of goals from set pieces. And how do you score late goals from set pieces? You put an absolute freak of nature, Dan Burn, up on the top, and he just wins every single header for you.
Well, in the comments, have you guys seen this? Ben Downing has given us his top 10 English left backs, although he's included Bird and Colwell in here. So, and he's even got Spence as well. And he's included
Spence
Matt
is
Target.
going to the World Cup.
Okay.
Spence is okay.
Well, hold on. In a way, you're proving my point, though, because my overall point is not about Harrison Burrows being some great player. It's about the lack of depth at left back. And you are, in trying to prove the point, Ben, including Matt Target at Middlesbrough in the conversation for the top 10 English left backs. I rest my case.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think the position is necessarily as weak as you guys were suggesting. But going back to who would you drop for Maguire, I think the player that's incredibly lucky is John Stones. I don't know if it's been being talked about enough. This guy's made 8 appearances in the Premier League this season. 8 single digits. And a lot of those have come, quite a few of those have come off the bench as well. So that is lucky. I mean, he is massively fallen out of favour to the point where, basically Guardiola wanted to sign someone in Gahey rather than play him. And Kusanov, who's, a 19-year-old kid from Uzbekistan, was being played, and Max Elaine, who they recalled from Watford as a 19-year-old, was playing over Stones as well. So he is lucky, and Stones is sort of one of those players that's viewed as just mustard, I think, by a lot of people because he has been so good and so classy for years for England and City. But in terms of who's bringing in the greater club form into this World Cup out of Harry Maguire and John Stones, and who's played more football in the last 6 months, I mean, Maguire absolutely walks it, doesn't he?
Yeah, and it's one that you can't, because Maguire's in the conversation, it's not like we're talking about the big 6 bias. And in previous tournaments, all the way from the beginning of the 2000s and into the mid 2010s, you had players on that plane, sometimes who'd played less than half a season just because they were in the top 6. But Maguire, of course, and versus Stones, they're both top 6 players. And Dan Burn, Newcastle, is a challenger to the top 6. So in that context, it's not like we're doing the silly thing of just taking a player because they play for a big club when it comes to John Stones. But with that being said, how can you get past the 8 appearances thing? He must. I think there must be some intangible element here to both Henderson and Stones, a mix of them being around teams and in teams that got deep into tournaments, and perhaps there's character things here as well.
They are winners. That's what they are.
Winners.
They are winners. They are winners.
But is Maguire not a winner?
I don't know. Is Maguire a winner?
I'm almost defeating my own point. I'm almost defeating my own point because Maguire's been around and about these winning teams that got deep into tournaments just as much.
No, not for England. Not for England. Like Maguire, England haven't won anything, have they? So, but Maguire won a great deal at Man United? Is it an FA Cup? Stones has won how many? Stones has won the
That's
Champions
fair.
League. How many FA Cups? How many Premier Leagues? And of course, you have to. Maybe I'm wrong for including the Premier League in this, but did Henderson win the Champions League at Liverpool as well? He's won the FA Cup. Has he won the League Cup? Have they look at what these players have won, and how many times have they won knockout competitions? And that's the experience that you need. The cojones, the balls. When it gets a little bit nervy in the 85th minute, and you're being pumped up by Spain or France or whoever, just to see it out and have a little bit of grit. And I think that both of those players offer that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree about the experience of going far. Well, I agree it's a benefit to a player, but I don't know if it can be used as an excuse for taking, a centre back who's played 8 games over a centre back who's played 35 games and played really well this season. So I think it's a minor thing that you'd look at if the players sort of even out. Maybe that's a reason why you take two very very similar players. Take one player over another player who's very similar. John, for me, is incredibly lucky to get in, and the fact that he's been released by Man City, they don't want to re-sign his contract. There's a good chance that he's playing for a bottom half Premier League club next season. I don't think that's crazy to say. It's not going to be a top 6 club, and I don't think it'll be a top 10 club. It could honestly be one of the newly promoted teams. I think he's only on a downward trajectory, John Stones. So yeah, very, very interesting. Very interesting that he's been picked.
Should we get on to the forward options?
We can. Should we narrow it down to 2 specific players, Harry? Would you love to talk about Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rogers? Tell us all about them and how great they are.
Listen, all I'm going to say is that it says a lot, I think, that we've gone from one tournament to the next with the same 3 strikers. And actually, this is a good thing for England, where you've got Kane, Watkins and Toney at the last Euros, and you've got Kane, Watkins and Toney again. Toney, even if he has been in a league that is not an elite league, has qualities that make him unlike many other strikers in the world, and has proven that those qualities work at a tournament, which we saw at the last one. Watkins, his movement is just phenomenal. Very different to Kane. Of course, Kane is, I'm not about to say Kane is anything but the clear number 1 striker for England, because he obviously is. But what are you getting out of Kane in an England setup? Typically, it is a blend of playmaking and just lethal finishing when he gets even half a yard of space. With Watkins, it's a very nice foil to that, I think, because it's less about the playmaking as much as it is line-breaking runs, extremely difficult to mark in terms of his movement. And when you're in a pinch where things aren't quite working tactically and you see a ball to go over the top and see if Watkins can do something up there, he is absolutely your man for that. I think I completely agree with what you said at the earlier part of the episode, Charlie, about does Kane see 120 minutes of this tournament? The answer is probably no. And for that reason, you can conceive of Watkins and Toney being on the pitch at the same time, especially if we're a goal down in extra time, trying to get us back on level to go to penalties. Good pairing there. A far better pairing than Watkins and Calvert-Lewin, or Toney and Calvert-Lewin, in my opinion.
I agree. Are we done? I've got one final thought, and I want to ask, I'm going to tell you what a successful tournament looks like for me, because I don't think that England have got it in them to win the World Cup. But my final thought is a successful tournament to me is not scraping past teams like Slovakia or Switzerland, needing to go to penalties against those sorts of teams, or a bit of magic from Jude Bellingham in the 97th minute or whatever it was. A successful tournament to me, and I said it to Sam earlier on, is going out against these low-level but still high-quality nations from Europe or from South America or Africa, and going out and putting in a performance where we convincingly beat them by 2 goals, and there's no sweat on anyone's back.
I think a good test for this here, Croatia, this is not the Croatia of 2018, and it's not even the Croatia of 2021. We should be putting at least 2 past Croatia, to what you just said, Ashley. And Ghana, I think, is a really stiff test because they have excellent forward players, and they will cause us problems. If we can do to Ghana I know it's lazy to just lump entire continents together, but if we do to Ghana what we did to Senegal at the last World Cup, where we score 3 goals against them, that's the sort of level you want to see to think England have a good chance here. Panama should be 5. Should be 5 or 6 to really turn the screw. Might even be, if we've got 6 points in the first 2 games, you even start to see rotation in that match, especially given that 6 points, even if by some ridiculous quirk you finish 3rd in the group, you are guaranteed to be last 32. So you really can play an entire fresh 11 if you win your first 2 games. Now, I say all this, we were pants in the last tournament, got all the way to the final, but it was with a very specific defensive ball that Southgate perfected. I don't know if we're about to bank on that with Tuchel. I think it's going to be, I hope anyway, forward thinking, a lot better standard overall than we've had from Tuchel so far. And the players who are tournament experience really come to the fore, know how to deal with the challenges. And we also see a nice bit of creativity from Saka, Rodgers. I'd love to see Madueke have a good tournament because I think he's been a bit average this season. But Gordon, wingers really having a good impact on an England team is something that I'd love to see as we progress through the group and hopefully go deep into the tournament.
Yeah, and you know what? This is the sort of thing, Harry, isn't it? People can't contradict. People need to be careful not to contradict themselves because there's lots of people that have said, I wish England had a clearer style of play. I wish Southgate actually looked like Southgate had an ideology behind him. But then these are the same people that are now saying, well, why wouldn't you take this player for something different or this player for something different, Taking, for example, Saka and Madueke. Madueke is the backup to Saka at Arsenal, is a similar player in terms of profile. If we have a clear way of playing with the wingers, taking a Madueke as a backup to Saka is the most sensible thing to do rather than taking a completely different player in Jared Bowen. So
can I really quickly I don't want to labour points too much, but it's just funny. Looking up stats before this, who is the most consistent passer per 90 in the Prem between Saka and Madueke?
Madueke?
It's Madueke. Saka is green off the charts on everything but passing, shooting, dribbling, even defending from his position. He is good across the board, except he can't pass apparently. Sorry. Anyways, yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Well, I guess that could that be because Arsenal have a very let's just get crosses into the box mentality. So a lot of what he's doing is feeding balls in for players like Gyökeres and Havertz to try and get onto the end of. Maybe that's why. Listen, if Bukayo Saka has no fans, I'm dead. I love Bukayo Saka in an England shirt, and there's just something about him that I really enjoy. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether there is a style of play. I'm not one of those people that necessarily thinks seeing a clear identity is that important when I watch England play. There's only so much that you can convey in 4 or 5 two-week camps across a season, and then whatever you get a few weeks before a tournament. You can't do what Pep Guardiola does and invent a whole new playing style. It's just is not possible. But hopefully some more risks being taken, some better attacking football, because this squad has so much quality in it.
Yeah, I agree. And Thomas Tuchel is a specialist in knockout football. That being said, I don't think that England are going to win the World Cup. I'm going to go with France. Charlie, Harry, I'm going to ask you both 2 questions. Where will England make it to in this World Cup? And who's going to win the tournament?
For me, I'm actually with you. Ash. I think France are going to win it. Their options going forward are just absolutely ridiculous. The fact that they could do a front four of Elise, Mbappe, Doué, and who am I forgetting? That's really obvious. Oh, Dembele, Ballon d'Or winner Dembele.
Did you mention Turkey?
And Shirky as well is as a fifth option. I mean, that is just outrageous, isn't it? They have such a good score going into this. Saliba at the back, it's a good time to be a French fan, isn't it? So yeah, do you say French fan or do you just say it's a good time to be French? Either way,
I think time to be a Frenchman or a French woman.
I think France will win it.
I've done a few permutations on the apps that allow you to do this, and there's versions of this tournament where we play a mega team in the last 32, and there's versions where we meet New Zealand in the quarterfinals. I mean, it is very, very difficult to predict given the extra knockout round. I like to think England's recent savvy will continue to help, and we will outperform perhaps where we should. I think we'll get to the semi-finals, but then it will just be a bridge too far as we start to knock into some real high-quality teams. I have a dark horse winning this. This is not some kind of bait answer. I genuinely think a team that has had a massive amount of quality knocking around, has a somewhat recent tournament win, and has been held back by having to pander to a specific player, which they probably won't have to now, is Portugal. Between Vitinha, João Neves, Bruno Fernandes, very solid centre-backs, good keeper, and the odd appearance from the old man, I really do think they have the ability to go all the way.
And if you're watching this and you wonder why we all started pissing ourselves, that's because Charlie put in the chat that Harry was going to say it was Ghana that were going to win the competition. That's enough. I'm not signing up. Look, if you're a regular pod viewer from us, you'll know how we sign off our episodes. I'm not signing this off. Harry is signing this off because
you guys are. I'll set you up and then you can say the piece. So 60 years of hurt. Jules Rimet still streaming.
Jules Rimet still streaming.
Jules Rimet still streaming.